Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of the Coffin Corner Podcast. I'm your host, GoodNightPunk, and with me as always, three times, is my good friend Rich. Richie.
Now we've got a streak going. 3 times is officially a streak.
That's right. I think, is that NBA Jam rules?
Yes, we're on fire, as they would say.
Perfect. There you go. What's going on, man?
Up? Well, not too much. As you know, we just had our rookie draft for our Dynasty League, and last night I had my first fantasy football draft, so it feels like football season is really getting to be in full swing.
Yeah, once that first fantasy football draft hits, you know you're almost there. And
exactly.
And honestly, I kind of want to talk about our picks in that, because I really liked what I got, to be honest.
You got some good ones. You got some very good ones. Jameson Williams falling to you in the second round. That was I'm surprised. I'm surprised he fell that far. Because that is such a great pick. You stash him on the IR, and when he comes back, I mean, he is so freaking talented.
Isn't that crazy? So the guy in front of me, Rich, another Rich, but not you or your dad, but
we're everywhere.
The guy in front of me was not there, so it was an auto pick. And the top picks of the all category, the next pick was Jameson Williams. And so I just assumed that I was going to be one pick off from getting the guy that I wanted in the second round. And it picked some random tight end, I think.
No. So, here's a funny story. He was texting me because he was out on his boat in the Gulf of Mexico. He lives down in Florida.
Oh, wow.
And he had been in the draft earlier, but was unable to get back in because he was like pulling into the dock.
Right.
So I texted him and said, "Hey man, you're on the clock." And he said, "Yeah, I can't get in. Can you get me a running back?" So I was like, "Sure." So I just went in and picked the top running back, which ended up being Khalil Herbert from the Bears.
Nice.
So yeah, if I had just auto picked, you probably would not have gotten Jameson Williams. So
I'm glad you went the extra mile to ask him.
I was helping him out, and it helped you out too.
So I got Damon Pierce in the first round. Let me just preface this by saying I was the 11th pick.
11th pick.
So out of 12, 11th out of 12. So with the 11th pick in the first round, I was able to get Pierce. And then Jameson Williams with the 11th pick in the second round. And then somehow Alec Pierce from the Colts was still sitting around. So
yep. No, those are good picks. My dad was very unhappy that you took Damon Pierce right ahead of him in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really need running backs. I had 8 on my roster. I didn't feel the need to take more running backs.
So
I did take Isaiah Pacheco in the third round just because
he was on my list. He was in my
he was still there.
Queue.
I figured he's a good one to stash on the practice squad.
So my team had Ronald Jones on it still, and James Robinson, who is second place. And then my only other backups, I think, are Jamal Williams, who's a second guy on the team, and there's one other one. So I really needed halfback. So having him be there was really good for me. And then
he's somebody you might be able to start week 1.
Yeah, I still have. I might have to start him because my starting halfbacks are Jonathan Taylor and Dobbins, but we'll see what happens there. Who'd you end up getting? I forget.
So I took Alan Lazard in round 1 because he was a free agent. And,
understandably.
Yeah. As the number 1 option in Green Bay, I just figured, hey, he's a more likely candidate to help my team this season, and that's what I needed more than a rookie at that point. And then in 2, who did I get in round 2? Man, I don't even remember.
It was a halfback. Was it not?
No, I don't think so. Gosh, I'm completely blanking. Yeah, I don't remember who I got in round 2.
Oh no, it was a wide receiver. It was gosh, who was it? The guy from the Bills? Not the Bills.
I'm just gonna pull up my roster. I don't remember.
I remember who it is. You're right when you say it, I'll know.
It, and I don't even remember.
Right when you'll say it, I'll know.
George Pickens. That's right.
Pickens.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy with that one. That dude looks so good in the preseason, and him and Pickett seem to have a pretty good relationship. So that's one more of maybe not for this year, but going forward, I think he's going to have a pretty good career in Pittsburgh.
My team was so good last year. I left everyone on the taxi squad the entire year. So we'll see.
I know.
Pierce is not going on the taxi squad, but I also picked up Desmond Ridder and put him onto the taxi squad with Alec Pierce and Jameson Williams. So I got a nice rookie class going there. I probably won't move that taxi squad this entire season either, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to need to pull anybody off unless it ends up being George Pickens, because I also then went and picked up Isaiah Likely, the tight end out of Baltimore, and put him on my practice squad. I also picked up Jalen Tolbert, who was a free agent after the draft. I just stuck him on my team as well because I figured, hey, he's the number 3, maybe the number 2 in Dallas. But yeah, but see, I'm happy with my team. Underperformed, but I've got Michael Pittman, who's a breakout candidate. I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. I've got Aaron Jones, Javonte Williams, TJ Hawkinson. I forget some other guys. But yeah, I'm happy with my team. Mahomes, my quarterback. I just had a bad season last season. Hawkinson going down, Mahomes not performing as well. Javonte Williams never got the starting job last year, but hopefully this year he will.
Yeah. I mean, I was ready to go into this draft thinking I needed a backup quarterback because I had Trey Lance on the taxi squad all last season, but turns out
it was the good play just to hang on to him.
Yep. They said everybody says it when they draft a quarterback. He's our quarterback of the future. So I'm like, all right, well, I know Jimmy G's not going to be there forever. For whatever reason, they're always trying to trade him. And so at some point he'll have his day. So we shall see what happens.
Well, we'll of course we'll be discussing that league and the other leagues that we're in throughout the season. So everybody will get to follow along to see how our draft picks do.
Speaking of drafts, though, that leads us into the top 5s we did for this week.
Yes, very similar as I expected.
Yes, so this week our top 5s that we're doing here at the top of the show is going to be the top 5 teams we think are most likely to get the number 1 pick in next year's draft. So that basically, who's going to do the worst this season?
Yes, which sounds easy, but
there's
always one or two teams that kind of just collapse out of nowhere. And that's actually, I'll start off with my number 5. I put the Browns, and my thought process behind that is they have Nick Chubb, they have Amari Cooper, but they don't have Deshaun Watson for 12 games. If they start off very, very poorly, I mean, what's to keep them from Deshaun Watson? He's hurt and he misses. He plays 2 or 3 games.
He's not going to play there this whole season,
right? Like, I mean, there's always that possibility. And teams, when Jacoby Brissett's the quarterback, if the teams just load the box to stop Nick Chubb, he may not have a good year. So I thought, well, maybe that's the team that just collapses. They get injured or there's just the tough schedule in the AFC North. So that was kind of my like wild card team. I put them at number 5.
That would be. I would love that for our friend Baker Mayfield.
Oh yeah, I would love great
that.
Revenge. That would be the curse of Mayfield.
Yes, it'd be great. I'll start at my number 5 too, then, because it's kind of out there. I put the Giants. And simply for the fact that Daniel Jones, don't trust him. I mean, it's like a lot of news and media outlets believe that this is his like make or break season, and I don't see him making anything. I see him breaking.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, so I believe he is a free agent after this year. So, I mean, yeah, it's very much like, hey, if you perform well, you can earn a bunch of money. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you'll be a backup in Green Bay next year. Like, it's just, you never know what's going to happen with them. And I mean, Barkley is talented, but can he stay healthy? And Galladay's talented. Can he stay healthy? Like, I could definitely see it happening too, where it just doesn't come together like they hope it is, and they have a terrible year.
People think that Darius Slayton is somehow going to be cut this week.
I've seen
in week 3, which leaves Galladay, who Giants fans hate for some reason. As a Lions fan, I love him, but he hasn't done anything there. That leaves Galladay and Wendell Robinson, I think that's his name, the rookie, as like the main receivers.
And Kadarius Toney.
Yes. So like, there's really who's their tight end even?
I don't know, because they let Ingram go. I have no idea who they have instead now.
Let's see. It is Daniel Bellinger, another rookie, I believe.
Wow.
2022 round 4 tight end. So I don't know. That's I was looking at teams, like, not to be like, here's the top 5 that are the betting options.
Right. We would just have the same top 5 because we would have just looked at the odds.
The odds, yeah. I just don't think the Giants are going to do that well.
I hope they don't, because they're in my division. So.
Well, I mean, I'm looking down their defense, and I don't even see a name I recognize besides Kayvon Thibodeau. Blake Martinez,
who's
maybe.
Hurt. Yeah. I think they have Leonard Williams there.
They do.
But yeah, no, I could definitely see that. So my number 4 was the Falcons. So it's a team we've talked about. They've got Kyle Pitts. He looks great. Drake London, I loved coming out of college. He's banged up right now. They don't really have much else.
Don't
Marcus
really
Mariota,
have a halfback.
Yeah, Desmond Ridder, and then I can't even name one of their defensive players. So I could definitely see the Falcons having a terrible season and finishing number 1, and then drafting a quarterback. But yeah, I mean, that one, that's kind of the way I looked at the rest of my top 5, was just like, all right, who are the teams with the least talent in the NFL? And the Falcons were one of them.
Yeah, it's funny, is I didn't put them on my list, I don't think. No, I have them.
Did.
I do have them. I'm thinking of a different, really crappy team. So, yeah, so number 4 for me, I have the Bears. I know you'd love that.
Oh yeah, my dad will be happy to hear that.
Unless Justin Fields pulls a rabbit out of his hat, I don't understand. I don't see where the talent is. N'Keal Harry, I've seen him be listed as a name to be dropped this week. A man they traded for.
And I think that's because he's hurt, so they'll probably do like an injury settlement thing with him. I like David Montgomery. I think is a pretty good halfback. But yeah, they've got Darnell Mooney, David Montgomery, Justin Fields, and then they've got a whole lot of just question marks. I will say I didn't watch the game tonight, but I saw the stat line. Justin Fields had a hell of a night. He was 14 of 16 for like 170 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, balled out of his mind, which is great, but gotta see it in the season.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, obviously he's playing as a first teamer there, but the thing about the stupid preseason is, like with the Cardinals, they don't play most of their first or second team. So if Justin Fields could have been playing, depending on who they're playing, he could have been playing against, third stringers. So I don't know. I hope he does. Yeah, I hate watching, like, I don't know. It's hard to watch people draft.
Well, you just don't want the Bears to succeed. I understand that. It's ingrained inside of you. But no,
on top of that, they like trade away their best defensive pieces in the offseason and get what to replace it.
Well, and hopefully, Roquan Smith is still there. We'll see how long that lasts.
What is an A designation on a player? Questionable?
A?
Yeah, I'm looking at the ESPN raw depth chart, and he's got a red A next to his name for Roquan.
I have no idea. Never seen that before. I thought questionable would be a Q. That's what I'm
there's Q's here. So
yeah,
but I click on his name and it just says questionable. So I don't know what the A is.
Huh? That's weird. Yeah,
maybe
suspended
absent
is. Oh, that could be. Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, the Bears, they do have a lot of question marks on the offense and defense. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they finish the worst, but I hope, for Justin Fields as a player, I want him to succeed. I don't want him to be stuck in a Mitch Trubisky type situation where maybe they've got the physical talent and then it just doesn't translate into the season because of the coaching staff or the players around them or whatever. But I mean, I root for them obviously for my dad, but also just because hey, they're a bad team. They deserve some success. I'd rather see a team like the Patriots fall off. They've had enough success. I'm ready to see them struggle a bit. But
yeah, for sure.
So my number 3, I went with the Jets. Just because
that's the one I didn't put on.
The Jets, yeah. I actually like a lot of the players on the Jets: Breece Hall, Michael Carter, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson. I have nothing against Zach Wilson. I don't really know if he's a good quarterback or not. I don't watch the Jets play very much, so I can't say. I don't want to see them fail, but it just seemed like, what teams usually end up bad. Well, the Jets were one of them.
Yeah, it's funny because maybe I did this. Maybe I have this fake sense of them being better than they are because of Madden when I picked the Jets and I turned them into something. But I really do feel like their offense has a really good chance to not be bad. I mean, they have a lot of good players, like their tight ends: Tyler Conklin, C.J. Uzomah, good tight ends. I like Corey Davis. Elijah Moore is a beast, and then they got Garrett Wilson, the rookie. That's a pretty good starting 3 wide receivers. Not to mention they still have Braxton Berrios, who I feel still has upside. Denzel Mims, who has apparently fallen out with his coach, so who knows if he'll ever do anything there. But Breece Hall now and Michael Carter. We talked about the Jets running back room last week. Like, if Zach Wilson could not be hurt and get it together this year, they might actually be decent. But I don't know.
No, I completely agree. I like a lot of the players they have on offense. Not to mention
they have two of the better guards in the league with Vera Tucker and Tomlinson. So I feel like their line's decent. If they can pull it all together. Maybe I'm just banking on them pulling it all together. I don't know.
Well, see, that's the thing is I feel like the Jets are one of those teams that every offseason I hear people talk about, man, they've got such talent if they can just put it together, and then they don't.
Well, that's like me. I feel that way about. I'm not a Commanders fan per se, like follow everything they do, but I think I feel that way about them every season too.
Oh,
like the
wide fan, and I absolutely feel that way.
The wide receiver room last year was ridiculous. Having Logan Thomas, and then Antonio Gibson was supposed to, continue to break out. But
the problem is the Commanders are always lacking a quarterback.
The quarterback was the biggest problem last season.
And we have one this season. They almost made my list, I'm not going to lie. But honestly, I looked at it and said, if Carson Wentz stays healthy all year, we at least win 6 games. I mean, that's just... We play enough bad teams and we always split with division opponents that we're going to win 6 games. If he gets hurt and we go back to Heineke, then we'll probably be in the top 5. But the Jets, Commanders, there are just several teams that they just they can stockpile talent that you really like, but there's just something that happens on the field where it never comes together, and that's just the way I look at the Jets.
Makes sense. I can see that for sure. My third was actually the Falcons, so I rated them a little higher than you did. Somehow I thought I didn't have them on the list, but it was the Jets I was thinking of. We both had the same number 2, and that's the Seahawks. I mean, Drew Lock, Geno Smith, terrible choices, either of them. 2 quarterbacks that are pretty much basically the exact same. So... and not a lot of talent. I was listening to the radio this week, and someone was talking about how they just could not fathom why DK Metcalf signed the contract he did this offseason.
I mean, we talked about the Falcons not having a lot of talent, and the Seahawks have less somehow. I think Metcalf, he got paid a bunch, and maybe that's all he wanted. He likes Seattle. He just wanted to stay. They gave him a bunch of money, and he said, screw it. I mean, he'll have an easy year. He's not going to get tackled a lot because they're not going to be able to get the ball to him. So you're just going to be out there running around.
I say, wasn't it this season that Bobby Wagner left too?
Yes, Wagner and Wilson, they both are gone. This is the first year. Wagner's in L.A. now.
Yeah,
So
I remember
he'll
that.
get to play against Seattle. Yeah.
What is the saying? Spoil of riches? It's something
Yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also, Chris Carson retired, so he was always a
Mm-hmm.
pretty solid running back for them. Yeah, I mean the Seahawks, they have even less talent than the Falcons do, but there's still one more team that has
Oh
the
God.
least amount of talent in the NFL. And we've talked about them before, the Houston Texans.
What a crap show. Hey, but they're 3-0 in the preseason. I know we're talking
They
about
are.
week 2, so we'll talk about
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert. Houston's went undefeated in the preseason, so that's pretty damn funny. But
It's fun. I do like watching Damon Pierce run for them, so I do think like, hey, that's something. And then, they did draft some pretty good players in the secondary this year. But it's so uninspiring. I mean, you look at that roster and it's just like a yawn on the page. I just don't. I don't expect them to do anything.
When I look, okay, tell me if you agree with this. Every time like the USFL, the XFL, AAF, all these leagues form, and then they put together their teams, and then you go and you look at the roster and you're like, I remember that guy. I think I remember that guy. That's what I think. That's how this feels looking at the Texans team, because this team looks like it could be an XFL team, because you're like,
Yes.
oh, okay. I remember Brandon Cooks in the NFL.
Yeah.
Kyle Allen and Davis Mills. Yeah, they were in the NFL.
When the AAF, the Phoenix Hotshots, I would look at their roster and I'd be like, I think it was Rashad Ross was a wide receiver who had been on Washington. I remember seeing him thinking like, oh, he's still playing football. Good for him.
Oh,
And that's
Scooby
the way I
Wright,
feel about a guy
bouncing
like
around
Brandon Cooks.
everywhere.
Yeah, I look at Brandon Cooks like, oh, he's still in football. Good for him.
Yeah,
I wish he was somewhere better. But yeah, it's just. I mean, maybe they're building something. Like you said, they've got the pieces on the defense, Damon Pierce, but they, John Mechie before he got hurt, might have been a good receiver. Yeah, and they got a lot of picks.
A lot of picks. So,
but if I was going to place a bet on a team having the number 1 pick next year, I would only put my money on the Texans.
Yeah. Exactly. I also put a picture in here of the betting odds for the Super Bowl winner. So this isn't who gets the number 1 pick, but it's the betting odds on the Super Bowl winner. But okay. I think if you reverse the list, that's pretty much going to be the same thing, except different odds for the number 1 pick next year. So,
boy, 4 of my top 5 are right there.
Yeah. So Houston, it has the best odds to get the number 1 pick. The Falcons, who I had 3 and you had 4, have the second best odds to get the number 1 pick. The Seattle Seahawks, who we both had at number 2, have the third best odds to get the number 1 pick. The Jets, who I didn't even put on my list, have the fourth best odds to get the number 1 pick.
It's just you hear New York Jets and you immediately think terrible football team. That's just it's just like a knee-jerk reaction.
Well, top 5, there's a team that we both didn't put in from the betting odds, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a good team.
Low. Yeah, I'm surprised they're that low. I understand after last year they looked so bad that people maybe have just given up on them completely, but I mean they signed Christian Kirk, maybe overpaid him. They've got Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne's healthy. Mm-hmm. Lawrence looks better in the preseason. And I really like their defense. I took their defense in the draft I had last night as my number 2 defense, just because, I mean, Trayvon Walker, they've got a lot of talent.
Josh Allen, linebacker, that guy's a beast. It's funny because every time you talk about Josh Allen, it's always the Bills quarterback. But this linebacker lives in the shadow of the Bills quarterback, despite being, I think he was a Pro Bowler last year. So
on a terrible team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm surprised the Jags. I mean, I get it. It's the Jaguars. It's like the Jets. People just naturally put them at the bottom of every list. But I think the Jaguars are going to be sneaky. I won't even say good. I'll be sneaky average this year.
Yeah, they're not bottom 5.
Yeah, I mean that's high praise for the Jaguars.
6 is the Chicago Bears, who I had at 4. 7 is the Detroit Lions, who I wouldn't put in a top 5 despite them maybe deserving it.
Just can't do that to your team.
Can't do it. Sorry.
The Browns are actually middle of the road, which I understand. Like I said, that was my wild card team.
Yeah, the Giants are right in the middle of the road too.
Oh, they're pretty. Yeah, what are they, like 10th?
Oh, they are
12th?
10th. They are.
Yeah, they're bottom third of the league, which makes sense. I would have placed them bottom third. But I wouldn't have placed the Browns that high. I mean, they're what? 15th, 16th? So right in the middle of the league. I wouldn't consider them that good. Maybe if they had Deshaun Watson all season, but you're talking about 5 games of Deshaun Watson. That doesn't get you to halfway.
Yeah, and I pulled this info tonight, so this is
They have the
most
same
up-to-date.
odds as the Cardinals. That's insane.
Yeah, that's no, and they have better odds than the Titans.
Yeah, that's a little weird to me. I mean, they need to factor in Deshaun Watson's just missing 12. Like, no disrespect to Jacoby Brissett, but you're going to tell me the Browns with Jacoby Brissett and the Cardinals have the same odds to win the Super Bowl? That's a little ridiculous.
Doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, it'll be fun to look back on this next January to see how close we were.
Close we were. Yeah, I'm looking forward to throughout the season, depending on the top 5s we do, plus at the end of the season, doing like a recap show. That'll be fun.
Yes, I always like to do predictions. Me and my dad every year actually come up with our own predicted standings for the league, and then at the end of the season, we count up how many games we were off for each team, and we owe the other person that many dollars, like $1 per win per loss. It's pretty fun. You realize, like, you make them in August, and then sitting there in January, you're like, man, I thought like the Patriots would be so much better, or I thought he always thinks the Bears are a playoff team, so I always get some money from him from that.
So
but it's a fun exercise.
Sports betting became legal just before the season last year.
Yes.
And I remember I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to make a bet for the Super Bowl winner. And so I did. Unconventionally, I picked the Titans as the Super Bowl winner. And they almost went to the Super Bowl. I was so close. They had really good. It was a really good bet, too. It was so close. But
I don't usually do
it's fun to do that.
Bets. It is. I like to do like prop bets, like, oh, I think Terry McLaurin will have under 100 yards receiving or something like that. I don't usually do the long-term ones, but I think we talked about this, doing like a bets portion of the podcast before each week and discussing any bets we're going to place. And maybe when we do our season preview in 2 weeks, each of us will pick one team to place a Super Bowl winning bet on.
Speaking of that, I haven't really mentioned this to you. I'm going to be out of town Thursday and Friday of next week, so more than likely our next episode will be that preview episode.
Oh, okay.
So
well, there you go.
For everybody listening right now, I wanted you to let you know during the podcast so you all knew. We will be back in 2 weeks for the start of the NFL season podcast. No preseason. Well, I mean, I guess there's week 3 to discuss, but we'll do that.
Be quick though.
Well, it'll be a quick discussion next week, or in the beginning of the season podcast.
September 9th.
Yeah, so we'll do the like notable cuts, that type of thing, all the like little stuff, random things that people picked up that might change our mind on some of these teams' spots here. But so just so everybody knows that's listening, if you don't see the podcast next week, it was because of that. So I know that when you're looking at your feed and you don't see something, you wonder what's going on. So now you know. There you go.
All of our thousands of listeners and fans would have been worried next week.
Exactly. Well, if we blew up this week and then we didn't have one last week or next week, and then everyone just left, that'd just be sad. So there you go.
Just our luck.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Yeah, so week 2 preseason observations.
Yeah, so I figured we'd start with the quarterback battles because those are always the most interesting portion of any offseason.
Are there any left?
There's not really battles so much. I think all the starters have been named, but there's still, like the situation in Pittsburgh is still interesting because they haven't announced Trubisky for week 1 that I've seen. They announced that he's going to start preseason week 3, which I think they play tonight, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Poor Trubisky, because everybody the fans want Pickett.
Well, and Pickett has played very well. Last week, he was 6 of 7 for 76 yards and a touchdown, and that was against some starters. So, I mean, he's playing well, and I mean, we've discussed it. There's Pickett is the guy they've chosen to be the future of the franchise. You took a quarterback in the first round. Just put him out there. He's playing well enough. I mean, I can't imagine Trubisky is playing that much better than Pickett in practice that they're going to play Trubisky for 3 or 4 weeks and then put Pickett out there. I mean, I feel like Pickett might end up getting this job by week 1 now. He's playing pretty well, and I think I mentioned this before. It reminds me of the Derek Carr situation with the Raiders when he beat out Matt Schaub, even though they had announced Schaub as the starter. I think Pickett, by next week, they're going to be like, you know what? Pickett's starting week 1. He's just, maybe they probably have the same amount of chance to win at this point, but Pickett can develop into something greater where I feel like Trubisky's probably plateaued in his career.
Well, the good news for him is that he plays the Lions tomorrow. So
it's tomorrow. Okay. Well, there you go. I mean, he's going to throw like 6 or 7 touchdowns.
Shouldn't hurt him.
So another good performance by Pickett, and he may well be named a starter next week. So.
Yeah, but when you're going 6 for 7, that's pretty good indication. You gotta love that.
Yeah, 6 for 7, 76 yards and a score. I mean, that's a hell of a drive right there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well,
other battles,
we talked about it last week. These other 2 battles were basically finished now, with starters
and
named.
officially done with Baker being named the starter in Carolina. Ironically enough, Darnold then got hurt last night. So even if he had not been named the starter, he's like the last one standing.
Yeah, that's there you go.
Yeah, but well deserved. I mean, Mayfield was the better option out of Darnold and Mayfield, and even if you want to throw Matt Corral or PJ Walker in there, Baker was just the better quarterback. And then in Seattle, they named Geno Smith the starter. I mean, that's like choosing between 2 pieces of what. I didn't really matter which one they went with.
Name 2 peanut butter brands.
Yeah,
Jif
it's like
it's like picking between Jif and any other peanut butter.
Yeah, it's like I mean, they're screwed no matter what. Geno Smith is not that he's so much better than Drew Lock. Is he? I mean, Drew Lock just is a waste at this point. I mean, Geno Smith played 7 games last year. I mean, he's not that impressive either. It's Seattle. They're terrible.
It was so funny. I was listening to the radio this week, and they were talking about this Geno and Drew Lock. They're like, why would Seattle pick up Jimmy Garoppolo? And I this whole time I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, you have a much bigger ceiling with Drew Lock or Geno Smith than you do with Garoppolo. And then I'm like, I literally out loud said, what are you talking about? And the next thing he says is, but Garoppolo has a much higher floor. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. But with a smaller, you know what you're getting with Garoppolo. He's pretty much not going to develop anymore. But I'm like, do you really think Drew Lock or Geno Smith their ceiling is up at Garoppolo's floor?
Well, you want to say Geno Smith and Drew Lock can develop. Can they? Geno Smith came out in 2013?
A long time ago.
Yeah, like these guys aren't 22, 23 years old. Like they've developed. They are where you're going to get them. And Jimmy Garoppolo, like you said, his floor is at or above their ceiling.
Yes,
the
exactly.
Geno Smith's best day is not going to be anything more than Jimmy Garoppolo's average day.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I can't believe they haven't made a move for him yet. Maybe they're hoping the 49ers just cut him. Maybe the 49ers refuse to trade him in the division.
To trade him in the division. But
Yeah,
you have
and that
no
could
choice
be.
if you cut him.
Yeah,
So-
like I sure hope if he does become available as a free agent, Seattle has to make a move, because if you honestly tell me you're going to go in with Geno Smith as your starter, but tanking doesn't exist in the NFL, I'll just laugh in your face. Like, that's...
They're running the Davis Mills drill.
You know, I give the Texans with Davis Mills, at least he's a second-year player, and they're like, they can
He's
use
not-
the excuse of, we're trying to see if he can develop. Like, okay, I'll accept that. But you can't tell me we're going to see if we can develop Geno Smith as a starter.
That would
No.
be believable if Geno Smith or Drew Lock had never been starters. And they both have, and they both didn't do anything. So,
Well, and they use the Drew Lock, like Denver used that when they say, we're going to start Drew Lock and see if he can develop. All right, but that was 4 years ago. He hasn't developed. Eventually, you've got to cut bait and be done. Geno Smith, I just looked it up, is 31 years old. Quarterbacks do not suddenly become a Hall of Fame quarterback at 31.
how old
Drew
was...
Lock's only 25. He's actually
I know
younger
he's
than I
young,
thought.
but Drew Lock is the one they were actually talking about on the radio that they thought had the biggest quote-unquote ceiling. But I'm like, just because you're young doesn't mean you have a big ceiling.
Right, that's the problem. Is he's been given the opportunities, and he hasn't even developed into a starting caliber quarterback, clearly, since he lost to Geno Smith.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd be interesting to see if Geno is starting week 1, depending on what the week 3 roster cuts happen. But we'll talk about that in a couple weeks when we do that other podcast, see where they land there.
I can't wait to see what happens there. In other quarterback news, so this wasn't a battle because Tannehill was going to be their starter, but Malik Willis has played really well in the preseason.
Dude.
Did you watch tonight's game against the Cardinals?
I did not, but I watched the highlights from last week, from week 2. Dude, some of those evading the sacks and then the sidearm throws, some of those throws he was making with accuracy, even when he stepped back and planted his feet and threw the ball, he looks really good.
Yes.
I still wish the Lions had got him. Like, I wanted him so bad. I didn't want him with the number 2 pick, but
right, you could have got him in the second or even beginning of the third round.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he has definitely impressed a lot of people. Again, he's not going to overtake Ryan Tannehill, but with Tannehill's contract, there's always the possibility that he becomes a cap casualty next year. And Willis looks very capable of starting. He played tonight against the Cardinals. I was actually watching it while we did our draft. He looked good. Some good scrambles. Some good passes to fellow rookie Treylon Burks. So yeah, I definitely think they found a guy that will be a starter in the league probably next season. And then if Tannehill does struggle for some reason or get injured, then he would definitely step in as their number 1. But,
imagine an option run where you have to worry about handing it off to Derrick Henry or Willis taking off.
Yeah, that's a pretty good duo.
That would scare me, honestly.
But yeah, that's those are the quarterbacks. Any other quarterback stories that you want to talk about? I tried to cover all the bigger ones.
The only one that I had was, I remember that Ritter had done well again in the second week. I'm pretty sure, but
yes, he did. He did actually. I forgot to include that one.
Because
I haven't really heard. Like, I haven't heard if they're actually competing. It feels like Mariota's been given the job.
Yeah, I think he's starting for sure. But, I mean, so has Tannehill. And I'm thinking future-wise, because a lot of the times you look at these, and he wasn't even a early drafted quarterback. He was just a guy that was projected to be one of the top 3 quarterbacks and was taken in the 3rd round. So I look at the top list of quarterbacks taken and where they are and where they could be. Mariota's not a long-term starter. So seeing Ritter do well, that's looking good for Falcons fans. maybe not for this season, considering they're projected to be in the bottom 5 of the league, but knowing you have a quarterback already, and next year with your high picks, you can basically take what you want. It's a pretty good deal. So, okay,
Yeah, I could definitely, if they are as bad as their odds have them to be, I mean, we could see Ritter later in the season when they're out of the playoff chase and they just decide to put him into game action. So, I mean, he could end up starting some games this year.
Yeah, so last week, in week 2, like I was talking about, he was 10 to 13 for 143 yards. Mariota was 6 out of 10 for 132 and a touchdown. So, Mariota, averaging a couple more yards per pass. But, I mean, keeping up with Mariota for Ritter is a good sign for him.
It is. It is. I definitely I liked Ritter coming out of school too. I like he's very mobile, and if he can continue to develop like that, then yeah, I don't see the Falcons doing well and sticking with Mariota because he's playing so well and fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, if they really are in the bottom of the league, like, yeah, I absolutely think they'll end up putting Ritter in there, even if it's only week 18. But
throw him in for a few,
see how he can do in a real game situation against starters and play the whole game and see what he can do. But
for sure.
Back to running backs, there are some interesting running back stories coming out of week 2. There are a couple rookies. I'm going to start with the Commanders. Obviously, we discussed this. I think Antonio Gibson. The story broke last week that he was on the punt protection. Well, then in the game, he ended up returning kicks, which he hadn't done since college, and playing with the backups while Brian Robinson started the game with the starters. They played today, but they didn't start any of their starters, including Robinson, Gibson, J.D. McKissick. They basically rested like everyone that has a roster spot locked up already. So there's really nothing new about whether or not Brian Robinson has completely taken over the job or it's going to be a split backfield. But I will say Ron Rivera has said he's going to ride the hot hand, and he called out Antonio Gibson and says he needs to run harder. I feel like the coaching staff has completely soured on Antonio Gibson as the starting running back. I'm really excited to see week 1 against Jacksonville who takes that first carry. My money right now, honestly, would be on Brian Robinson. I just feel like Antonio Gibson can be a still a good piece of the offense, kind of in that same J.D. McKissick role. But Brian Robinson, if he runs harder, he gets the short yardage, which is something that offense constantly struggles with. So something to still watch. But I know, like in the fantasy draft that I did last night, Antonio Gibson is falling down draft boards. But he got taken, and then I took Brian Robinson as my 4th running back, just as a matter of, hey, he might end up being the starter, and I got great value.
Well, the biggest thing for me with that running back situation is that I would believe far less that Brian Robinson had a chance to take over the number 1 spot if Antonio Gibson, who's supposed to be the number 1 guy going into their camp, wasn't playing a lot, and he was just kind of resting, and Brian Robinson was going off while Antonio Gibson wasn't in the game. But the fact that he's doing it while they're still trying to play Gibson minutes and try to give him touches just proves that there is a battle, whether or not they will admit it outright. You know what I mean? Like other teams, so for example, since we're talking about our favorite teams here, the Lions, Jamal Williams supposed to be the number 2. Swift, number 1, basically the two-headed monster. I think so far, they play again tomorrow, so they've only had 2 games so far in the preseason. Between the 2 of them, they've run 7 times, and everything else has been other running backs. Anyone else that does good, so like Justin Jackson, who used to be on the Chargers, is on the Lions, and he's tearing it up. But I am not going to say Justin Jackson is fighting for the number 1 spot because the other guys aren't even fighting. So, you know what I mean?
Right. My only area of concern is, when we talk about like the number 1 running back, I feel like Antonio Gibson's still going to be involved. Robinson may be the
right.
first and second down. He may get
He'll be the Jamal
60%.
Williams.
Yeah, like he'll get 60% of the carries. Antonio Gibson might get 40. Like it's not going to be a Najee Harris type situation where the backup barely sees the field. I just think that Gibson isn't the favorite of the coaching staff anymore. I think Robinson is based off the way he runs.
They're literally going to have the same type of deal as Swift and Jamal Williams, basically, where it's Swift is the guy, but Jamal Williams still gets plenty of touches in a game.
Right.
Where like one series might be Swift, one series might be Jamal Williams, or it might be both of them. So, but
yeah, it's something interesting to watch because it's like I've mentioned this before. I've always wanted us to have just like a stud running back. Like running back to like the Clinton Portis days. So I would love to see Brian Robinson be a guy that gets 70% of the carries. But I feel like it's going to be a much bigger split than that.
Listen, I've been wanting that for 20 years. Yeah. Since Barry Sanders retired, I've wanted a workhorse halfback. Never gotten it.
Through the Amir Abdullahs and
no, I'll tell you who I thought was going to be it.
Bell.
Javid Best, I thought was going to be it.
Yes.
And
Javid
then
Best.
he, busted up his knee and never really played again. But when
which was the one that had constant concussions? Was that Bell or Best? I remember there was a running back that you guys took in the second round.
No, it wasn't his knee. It was Best. Javid Best. It wasn't his knee. It was his head.
Okay, that was Best.
Which makes sense. Totally makes sense why he retired, because that last concussion was the end of him. And I would rather him retire and live a good life than continue to try to chase a dream that will ruin his life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, hopefully we'll see how that plays out. But and then moving on to the Bills. So James Cook, when he was drafted, people got super excited because Devin Singletary and Zach Moss kind of underwhelmed in Buffalo last year, and James Cook is the brother of Dalvin Cook, so naturally there's maybe he'll be as good as his brother, and the Bills have a stud running back, and that was the thought all offseason, but Zach Moss has actually been playing really well in the preseason, and the reports out of practice are that James Cook has been struggling in pass protection, which for running backs obviously is super important, especially when your quarterback is Josh Allen and you have to protect him at all costs. So I still think James Cook might get some usage throughout the year, but a lot of people were like, oh man, James Cook by week 1 is just going to be the unquestioned starter in Buffalo. But yeah, I don't think he is at all. I think he's still clearly number 3 behind Singletary and Moss.
So I remember when Zach Moss was drafted. It was back in 2020 during the pandemic. I remember when he was drafted. I remember watching him in Utah first off because I'm a Pac-12 fan. Really good halfback. And then when I saw they got him all the way in the 3rd round, I thought they had something good there because I really am just not a big Devin Singletary guy. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, sweet. And then they drafted James Cook. What round did they get him in? It was the 2nd round, yeah. So I'm like, Zach Moss is just done skis. But it sounds like he's actually, that might have lit a fire under him. So we'll see.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, it might be the motivation he needed.
But I despite the fact he's not to say he's never lived up to expectations, because I think he's had some decent stats in the times that he's played. He's just never been the number 1 guy, but it'd be interesting.
Right,
to see
he's
what he
been given the opportunity a couple times to be the number 1, but he's never really made a splash.
Yeah, so in the 2 years he's played in Buffalo, he's had 112 attempts in 2020 for 481 yards and 4 touchdowns. Not bad stats for a second guy. 96 attempts in 2021 for 345 yards and 4 touchdowns. So averages about 4 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns a year as a backup. That's not too bad.
Yeah. It's not too bad. It's not great. It's not, blow you away type numbers, especially for a team like Buffalo that, their offense really is more of a run first offense. They just usually run with Josh Allen.
It's just a lot of Yeah, I'm with you. He doesn't have a lot of catches either. And for a team where, they're a passing attack team, that can be tough.
Right. Definitely. But and then moving on. So Damon Pierce, obviously, we've talked about him. He didn't play in week 2. He played last night, 6 carries, 37 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, I feel like that guy's all but locked up the starting spot in Houston. Really no reason that Marlon Mack should be.
I was about to say, still. I don't even know who the other guy was anymore. Because all the hype, everybody is talking about Damon Pierce. So if it is not him, everybody's going to be surprised.
Yes, it will be a little shocking if they stick with Marlon Mack, or I think they have Rex Burkhead too to be like a PPR role. But Damien Pierce just looks like he looks fantastic out there running through people. I mean, the guy needs to be on the field.
Yep, for sure.
And then last piece about running back. So Ronald Jones in Kansas City. He hasn't played much in the preseason. They drafted Isaiah Pacheco. They've got Edwards-Helaire. Every report that I see out of Kansas City is that Ronald Jones is most likely to be released on Tuesday. Just an interesting piece for people. If you're drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you want to make sure you draft Pacheco to back him up. I don't think Pacheco's in any threat right now to steal carries, but he's looked good in the preseason, and Andy Reid likes him, and Andy Reid is the type of coach that he's just going to play whoever's the better running back, and he doesn't care who's where you were drafted, who's making more money. So
throw on top of that
interesting to watch.
Yeah, throw on top of that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been hurt several times, so
and struggled when he's healthy.
Yeah, that too.
So then we'll move on to the wide receivers. I like this story out of Denver. Russell Wilson coming to Denver, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. He's got great receivers. Anytime a new quarterback goes to a new team, the question is always, who's his favorite? Yes, it happened last year with Stafford. It was a question between Kupp and Woods. Clearly, it was Cooper Kupp, and look what he did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the so right now it seems like Cortland Sutton is the one that Russell Wilson has been favoring. I guess he runs the routes, the deeper routes that Russell likes. He when they do the scramble drill like Seattle always did, where Wilson gets outside the pocket and just looks for an open receiver, Sutton's the guy. So that is the receiver that I'm kind of keeping my eye on right now. And then Romeo
Where's
Dobbs
he going? What's his average draft position for Sutton?
I don't know exactly where. I want to say it's probably round 6. It's the funny thing is Jerry Jeudy,
because it seems like a good. It seems like he seems like a perfect receiver to grab if you go halfback, quarterback, and you're looking for that first receiver in the later rounds of the draft. I do that often. I do that often where I'm like 4th or 5th round looking for a number 1 receiver. So many have gone off the board, but I just have focused on halfbacks, so.
Let's see. Cortland Sutton right now, so his average draft position is 47.45. So end of the 4th round. Jerry Jeudy's is 56, so 5th round, and not that much later than Cortland Sutton, to be quite honest. So,
yeah, see, that fits right into what I'm talking about. If you value halfbacks and you like to pick like one of the top quarterbacks with your 3rd pick, and you're looking for that first wide receiver in the 4th round, Cortland Sutton should be sitting there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he is a good target, like you said. I mean, you look at last year with Cooper Kupp. I mean, he was like a 5th round pick. The guy finishes number 1.
Yeah.
If you go running back, quarterback, you get Sutton, and then he blows up. Yeah, you're gonna win.
You're like, I got a number 1. I got a 1st round wide receiver this year with a 4th round pick.
Yeah.
Not to mention if you're in a keeper league, now you've got a 4th round keeper wide receiver that's at the top of the league.
Yes.
So
For sure. Speaking of keeper leagues, so Romeo Dobbs, the rookie in Green Bay, has been making all kinds of waves, and naturally, because it's Green Bay, he gets all kinds of attention because everything they do gets attention. But he's got a big hype train going off him. He's a rookie. You know, they drafted Amari Rodgers last year, and if I remember correctly, Amari Rodgers was having the same hype train last year, and now no one cares about him. But I just thought to point out, Romeo Dobbs does seem to be the hot piece of action in Green Bay or whatever it is, the hot commodity in Green Bay.
Which is hilarious since they also have, what's his face, Christian Watson? Yeah, Christian Watson,
yes.
who they drafted in the second round, and Dobbs was a fourth rounder.
Yes. Yeah, but Watson, I think, was hurt through most of the summer, so I don't know how much he's been in practice, and I don't even know how much he's played in the preseason. But
True. He is hurt
but yeah,
right now.
Dobbs is getting all kinds of hype. Speaking of hurt, Michael Thomas hurt his hamstring again. Has not played in the preseason. Probably won't play this week either. But that helps Chris Olave, who has been moving up, and a lot of people say he is actually the number one option in New Orleans over Michael Thomas. I actually saw that in a story, which kind of blew my mind because you'd think Michael Thomas, when healthy, would still be the better receiver, but maybe not. I mean, when was the last time Michael Thomas was on the field? 2020?
This is when we get to the point where, like with the Cardinals having A.J. Green, you're like, A.J. Green was one of the best wide receivers in the league. And then he just fell off.
Yep. Well,
so now we're at the
Julio
point
Jones.
we're at the point where, like, is Michael Thomas another one of those wide receivers that just ends up falling off completely, despite being one of the best my opinion, the best in the league in the years where he wasn't hurt?
Absolutely,
So,
he was.
I don't
That's
know.
the same thing. Julio Jones. I mean, he was. It just seemed like all of a sudden last year, Julio Jones, they're like, all right, we're trading him to Tennessee. Doesn't do anything. Cut. Now he's in Tampa Bay. It's like he just went from being Julio Jones to, oh, he's just some dude on Tampa Bay now. Like, it very well could be the same thing. I don't know. But Chris Olave, another good first round receiver coming out of school, probably going forward going to be the new number one in New Orleans.
It'll be interesting to see for sure.
It will.
He'll be good. I'm positive of that.
Yeah, I agree. A few other miscellaneous stories.
Wait, hold on. Back on the wide receivers, and this is only for those people in Arizona, since we're both in Arizona, that are listening, our friends and family, if they're around. Interesting wide receiver story. Somehow Andy Isabella is still finding ways to stick on to the Arizona Cardinals roster. Because I was positive he was going to be cut this year. And this preseason, he's suddenly found some kind of mojo to just try to stick onto the roster one more time.
He looked good tonight, too. They were calling him
crazy.
out. The announcers were talking about how great he looked and how he's probably earned a roster spot. I mean, that guy just... He's always that fifth or sixth receiver, never going to see the field, but when it comes practice time, he just looks too good to be cut.
Totally off topic, which is what I do on podcasts, but Andy Isabella is the guy that the Cardinals got with the pick that they got for trading Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen or Andy Isabella, who's had a better career?
I'd have to say Andy Isabella, but that is actually a tough question because I wouldn't say that either one of them has had a career at this point.
Anything like Josh Rosen just because he started a bunch of games for the Cardinals?
He's
I
probably made more money being a first-round pick and a quarterback, so maybe we'll say Josh Rosen. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say either one of them's had a career to judge.
It's just 2 years worth of picks from the Cardinals that were absolutely worthless.
And yet Steve Keim got an extension because he's a general manager genius.
Oh, okay. Let's stick on the Arizona Cardinals thing for a second. Hated that he got extended because he only got extended because he drafted Kyler Murray, which should be an indication of his drafting skills after the year before he took a first-round quarterback. And then the only reason you got Kyler Murray is because you had a number one pick because none of that worked out. And then if you look at every pick he's ever picked, how many of them have stuck past their first contract? The number is very, very small. That guy can't draft for crap. Now, I'll say this. He has a knack for picking up people like veterans that play well for 1 year, but then you always have a hole to fill when that player leaves. I don't like Keim as a manager. I don't understand how the Cardinals are constantly middle of the road to good. But maybe that's better with him being there than what they used to be, where they were just always bad. I don't know. But I just don't understand that extension because it basically came off the back of Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I don't really give him credit for drafting Kyler Murray when he had the number 1 pick. I mean, that was like a gimme. I would give him credit for a guy like David Johnson, who I think was a 5th round pick or a 3rd round pick. Like, you find somebody in the draft that develops and it's like, oh, good drafting. But all those 1st round picks that he has absolutely whiffed on, or like you said, that then leave and don't sign a second contract with us. His big thing to me is the trades. Chandler Jones came in a trade and was great. DeAndre Hopkins, he fleeced the Texans in that trade. And I do give him credit for that. But when I look at the draft, I really can't identify draft picks where I say, oh, that was a good scouting and good drafting, way to play the board and get great. I mean, maybe like Tyron Matthew and David Johnson. Like, those are really the only ones that come to mind.
Let's this is our podcast. We can do what we want. Sorry, everybody that doesn't care about the Cardinals, but I'm going to do this. Keim. Here's his draft picks. Ready for this? Quarterbacks. Logan Thomas. What the hell was that? Round 4 quarterback. Now he's one of the best tight ends in the league, not on the Cardinals. Josh Rosen and Kyler Murray. Those are his quarterback picks. 2 first-round quarterbacks. All right, move on to running backs. Stephen Taylor, round 5. Solid state special teams player, played 4 years. David Johnson. Turned
I like David Johnson.
One good season into a big contract, then got traded, especially after an injury. TJ Logan, this name I don't even recognize, round 5. Chase Edmonds, who is a 4th rounder, that's a good one. We'll say that. That's a good one. Eno Benjamin, 2020, round 7. That is still to be seen, but he might beat out, is it Darrell Williams? What's the name of the Kansas City running back that came here?
Damian Williams.
He might beat out Damian Williams to make the roster, which is huge because Damian Williams was the leading rusher for Kansas City last year. So that would be big for him. But let's move into the wide receivers here. Ryan Swope. Nope. John Brown. Didn't make it through his first contract. Walt Powell, round 6. Nope. 2014. Nope. J.J. Nelson, 2015, round 5. Another guy that stuck around and never did anything. But he was fast. Chad Williams, a round 3, 2017 quarterback. Did not do anything. Lots of hype in the preseason. Never did anything. Christian Kirk, 1 contract. Didn't get extended. Good wide receiver. Got paid a lot to go to Jacksonville. Never did anything here. He did stuff here. Didn't get a second contract. Andy Isabella, round 2, 2019. Never has done anything. Probably not going to get a second contract. Hakeem Butler in the same year as Andy and Isabella. The guy I thought was better than Andy Isabella. Never really even played for the Cardinals.
Nope.
And Keyshawn Johnson, same year, 2019. 3 wide receivers in that year. Not on the team anymore. Jonathan Cooper, 2013 in the first round, gone. DJ Humphries, probably his best pick ever. I'm going to keep going down here, but only with the first rounders and second rounders, just so you know how bad this is. I'm not going to list every single person he said. Let's see here. Robert Kimdichie.
Nope.
First rounder. Nope. Kevin Minter, linebacker. Nope. Deion Buchanan. He was in the XFL, I'm pretty sure.
Was he really?
He might be on a team now, but I'm pretty sure he's in one of those like other leagues. Deion Buchanan, 2014, first round. Nope. Marcus Golden, round 2, 2015. Didn't get a second contract, but he's back on the team because he's that good. Hassan Reddick didn't get a second contract, round 1. Isaiah Simmons still in his first contract. Isaiah Simmons should get a second contract.
He should.
Cornerback Byron Murphy. That was a good pick. That guy will definitely get a second contract. Tyron Matthew was at round 3 in 2013. That was a surprise pick because he was falling down draft boards. Should have been a first rounder. Good pick. Didn't get.
What's funny?
Did he get a second contract?
He did. I remember they paid him a lot of money, and then a couple years had to cut him.
Then they got rid of him.
I give Keim credit for drafting him in the 3rd round, but like you said, he was a first-round talent. I mean, that's not even... He was falling down draft boards because of character issues that weren't even real. I'm not going to give Keim credit for that one. He didn't identify the talent. Everybody knew the Honey Badger was talented. Yeah, he took a chance on him, but I don't give Keim credit for that one. I take back what I said earlier. He doesn't get credit.
Besides DJ Humphries, maybe his other best pick ever, which is going through a crap ton of picks from 2013, right? And he doesn't have a lot of good ones. The only other really good one was Budda Baker in the 2nd round of 2017.
Yes, that one has been very good.
But other than that, not great in the draft. Not a lot of second contracts to any high drafted players. He's terrible at it. Anyways, I had to go on that tangent just because we're from Arizona, and I always when you mention that extension, since we didn't have a podcast back then, and I definitely would have talked about then, it doesn't make any sense to me. The guy can't draft. He can sign free agents. Somehow he has a magic way with veteran free agents. But other than that, with the draft, he's terrible. He's terrible. I'm gonna say it. He's terrible. He has some gems, but he's terrible.
I agree. I think it's purely based off the fact that yes, they've gone from being continuously at the bottom of the league to continuously fighting for a playoff spot, and that's good enough. So extend him, extend Kingsbury, and let's just keep rolling.
Yeah, the Kingsbury one made no sense to me either. I'm like, you're going to extend these two before you extend Kyler Murray. These two are not doing anything for you. Game. Yeah, it makes no sense to me. I'm like, if you were to tear this team apart, losing Keim and Kingsbury would be better off than losing Kyler, in my opinion.
It'll be an interesting couple of years for the Cardinals. They've locked up the quarterback, the coach, the GM. I mean, these are the guys we're rolling with for the next couple of years, and we'll see. But we're gonna move on. Otherwise, we'll sit here for another 2.5 hours. We could go off
on the Cardinals forever.
Yes. But we'll stick with one of our other favorite teams. I just found this kind of funny. The Lions. I read that Jeff Okudah might have locked up the number 2 cornerback spot. And I find that funny because I know
the number 3 pick in the draft.
Yes,
the number 3 pick in the draft.
Disdain for the guy.
Dude,
so.
I love the Bear Okudah. Okay, I just wish that he could stay healthy and actually defend a pass. If he could do those 2 things, he would be a really good cornerback. But the fact that he cannot stay healthy and he can't defend passes is just really making it hard for him. Okay.
Well, he's going to have a lot of opportunity, too, as the number 2 corner this year. So,
here's the thing. They have a lot of really good cornerbacks, or what I consider to be really good cornerbacks, because last year when they had nothing and they had to play about 7 different cornerbacks over the course of the season, you got to see how good Will Harris was. You got to see how good Jerry Jacobs was. You got to see how good Mike Hughes could be. I never had a doubt in my mind that when Jeff Okudah came back from his injury, he would be thrown back into the starting lineup just because he was such a high pick. The fact that it's a story he's making the number 2 pick is actually good to me, for the simple fact that he had to earn it, or he's having to earn it. So while it seems dumb, it actually sounds good on paper because he's not just being handed the starting job because he was a number 3 pick. So if he's playing into it,
he was drafted before Dan Campbell got there, right?
Yes. And
so that's good that Dan Campbell's making him earn it.
It's just hilarious to me at this point that the favorite cornerback for me on the team is Amani Oruwariye. It's so hard to say, especially when I've been drinking. Amani Oruwariye. It's impossible. Anyways.
He needs a nickname. Give him a nickname quick.
6 sacks last year. I mean, he is a beast. Or 6 sacks. 6 interceptions last year. It's just sticky hands all over receivers. I love Amani. He's awesome. So having him on the other side while Jeff Okudah figures his crap out, I'm totally fine with that. And then, of course, if it can't, having Will Harris and Jerry Jacobs behind them, I'm good with that. Which is hilarious because Jerry Jacobs was an undrafted free agent who's played his way into the hearts of Lions fans. So
I thought I saw that Will Harris is the number 1. So Okudah would be opposite him.
There's no way.
That's what I thought when I read the story. They said that Will Harris was the number 1.
Will Harris is good, but he's a converted safety, and it makes no sense that he would be number 1. Or if Oruwariye is not a starter, then I don't know what Lions world I'm living in.
Let's check their depth chart on ESPN.
I'm staring at it. It has Amani and Will Harris still. Amani is the left cornerback. Will Harris is the right, with Jeff Okudah backing up Will Harris.
Okay, so maybe Okudah is going to beat out Amani, and then Amani would be the number 3. I don't know.
I'm going to have to research this because I don't pay attention. I haven't really been paying attention to the depth chart for cornerbacks on the Lions because I just assumed it was Oruwariye and Okudah.
Yeah, I love the position battle part. I mean, that's one of the fun things about Madden too, when you're trying to set your depth chart, deciding who you want to start. And we'll get into this. I added this to the week 2 cuts because this actually broke my heart, and it's a complete tangent. But the Commanders cut Kelvin Harmon, one of our wide receivers who I've always been a big fan of since he was drafted. That was kind of a big bummer. The guy hurt his leg, tore his ACL, I think in 2019 or 2020, one of the two, but missed a lot of time, never really got a chance to develop. Played well in the preseason every year. Didn't get on the field. Just a shame. I like the guy. But Cam Sims seems to have his position on lock. He did not play tonight with the starters, which I thought was cool. Even though Diami Brown, who was a 3rd-round pick last year, did play tonight. So basically, his roster spot is not locked up. But Cam Sims is. Cam Sims, of course, the big boy, 6'5".
That's the guy on your team that I love.
Yes. His Twitter handle is also Silky Sims, which I find very enjoyable.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But anyways, just a random tangent because you were talking about favorite players and depth charts and stuff, and it reminded me about Kelvin Harmon. So just wanted to bring that up. But yeah, we will definitely watch the Jeff Okudah storyline to see if he does, in fact, become the number 2 corner. And I will look at his stats every week to see how he does.
What's more important to me right now is who's the number 1, because you telling me Will Harris is the number 1 makes no sense to me. So
Amani and Okudah would be pretty good. I mean, that's a young tangent.
Will Harris's stats weren't even half as good as Amani's were. That's so confusing to me. Okay, anyways,
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
So last miscellaneous, I just want to throw this in there about Isaiah Likely, the rookie tight end in Baltimore. Obviously, he's a number 2 tight end behind Mark Andrews in a team that runs all the time. But they also use a lot of multi-tight end sets, and he's been lighting up the preseason. So I did go out in our Dynasty League, and I picked him up and put him on my practice squad. Just because it's just an interesting... I mean, the guy does look great in the preseason. I've watched a few of his highlights. And for a team like Baltimore, that they've got Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, and not really much else at receiver, and then they've got Andrews, Isaiah Likely could very well be the number 2 tight end. And still, the Patriots did it with Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. So, I mean, 2 tight ends can produce.
Yeah, we're going back to that saying I said earlier, the embarrassment of riches.
Yes.
Having Andrews, and then if Likely ends up being that good of a tight end, it's kind of like the Buccaneers, honestly, with Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, and then somehow they got Gronkowski on top of that. That tight end room was just absolutely monsters.
Yes, it was.
So,
That was my last note. You can, if you want to talk about this next thing.
This is a kind of a week 3 thing because it led into the week 3 games, but it's right in the middle there of this week going into this podcast, so I wanted to talk about it. Joint practices, man. What is going on with these things? Almost every single one this past week the headline was fights. Constant fights. Fight. Everyone just wanted to fight. And it's to the point where so many of these joint practices had to be ended early because everyone was fighting. Now, I don't know if that's like the goal of this, because in my mind, it would be our ones versus yours on offense and defense going back and forth to get them actual practice that you don't get in preseason games anymore. And I would say at least half of these things ended early because of fights, all of them, including the one I want to talk about. And that was the Rams and whoever they were joint practicing with. I can't even remember who it was.
It was the Bengals.
Okay, there you go. Rams, Bengals. So the 2 Super Bowl teams were joint practicing for some reason. Massive fight breaks out. Just a all-out brawl. If you've seen the video, there's just a giant mass of people. And in the middle of the video, here's Aaron Donald with his helmet off in his hand, swinging it at anyone and everyone he could swing it at. Absolute crazy.
As Defensive Player of the Years will.
Yeah, so the part that got me is how bad that looks. And the stories immediately became, look out for Aaron Donald to be suspended. Look out for Aaron Donald to be suspended. And I'm like, well, if you're swinging around a helmet, we already know that you shouldn't be doing that no matter where you are. So I could see a suspension for sure. Well, it turns out that is not happening. And not just because it's Aaron Donald Defensive Player of the Year, but check this out. Joint practices are not under coverage by the NFL. They are not overseen by the NFL. They are only overseen by the teams that are doing it. Meaning, if Aaron Donald were to be suspended, it would have to be from the Rams.
Yep.
And how many games do you think the Rams are going to give Aaron Donald for swinging a helmet at another team?
1 drive.
Yeah. You're not riding the plane home. You get to ride in the bus. That's about it. I just really feel like for Myles Garrett, because let's be honest, and you said this when I brought this topic up offline, he wasn't on primetime TV swinging a helmet at a guy without a helmet on. Okay, but this is the NFL, and video is taken everywhere, and that is going to be spread around, and any NFL fan that is not casual about it is going to end up seeing this video. So it's still being seen. And Myles Garrett got, an indefinite suspension that ended up being 6 games because he just didn't play the rest of the season. While Aaron Donald swings it at anyone and everyone within his arm distance in the middle of a giant pile, and nothing's going to happen to him. It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it like the Myles Garrett thing. It obviously was on prime time. He did make contact with Mason Rudolph. He gave Mason Rudolph a concussion. So there are other factors. I can understand the NFL coming down hard on Myles Garrett. But Aaron Donald still should not just get away with this for nothing. Like the NFL, yeah, maybe they can't punish him because they don't oversee the practice, but they can pressure the Rams and say, hey, you guys need to do something about this. You need to show other players that this won't be accepted.
This is not okay.
Donald accountable. I don't see the Rams doing that on their own. Because look at it this way. Even if they were to say, all right, we're going to suspend Aaron Donald 1 game. Their first game is against Buffalo that Thursday night. That's a huge game. They need Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
Well, then are they going to be like, all right, well, we'll suspend Aaron Donald
him against
week 2.
this terrible team this
when
week.
we play the Seahawks, we'll suspend Aaron Donald. Like, you can't pick and choose. So maybe they fine him. That's the easiest way for the Rams to punish him without really punishing him. They just signed him to a ridiculous deal so
Yeah,
they could be like,
giant
oh, we're
contract.
going to fine you $100,000, which is a drop in the bucket to you. Like that I could see being something. But yeah, if you're looking at, and I haven't seen the video, but when I read the story, it said he was swinging 2 helmets, one in each hand.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've watched the video, but I have not.
When he got shoved by his own teammate and almost fell down to get him out of that mass of people, he still only had 1 helmet in his hand, his own. Whether he was swinging 2, I saw a lot of helmet swinging going on in there. So if he had 2, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
But,
so I mean, Donald does deserve to be punished. Maybe because he didn't actually hit anybody, not as severely as Myles Garrett. Like if somebody wanted to make that argument, I guess I could see it. But he doesn't deserve to get away with this scot-free. Like he's got to get fined or something.
All I'm saying is that if you're going to indefinitely suspend Myles Garrett to send the message, do not do this again, and someone ends up doing it again and does not get in any trouble for it, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah. I completely agree. He deserves some type of punishment, and I can't wait to see if the Rams hold him accountable, and if they do, what they end up doing, because I feel like they're going to wait to see if this will just get swept under the rug before they actually announce anything.
Yeah, we'll see. It was just an interesting story that happened this week where I'm looking at it like, what?
Oh man!
Why are you doing this?
Joint practices. I remember it was DeAndre Hopkins when he was on the Texans, and I forget the corner. They got in a huge fight during a joint practice. It's like every year a joint practice is always some. There's always a fight. You know, you get a team that's been beating up each other all summer, and then they finally get to go full
up someone
against
else,
some other one. Yeah, because they always hold back on your teammates in practice, and then when you're going against an actual opponent, like they just all that testosterone and pent up aggression gets let out, and they just end up wailing on each other.
What a joint practices, man. If they're gonna keep those going as like the main way to test your first string, since they're not doing it in preseason, if people are swinging helmets at joint practices, the odds of you getting hurt are probably higher than playing in the preseason. So they got to do something about the overseeing of these joint practices.
Yeah, I was surprised the NFL doesn't oversee them, because they do have referees that go there, like actual NFL officials. Like, why would they just wash their hands of the entire thing and been like, yeah, we don't really oversee this joint practice.
We don't want to be a part of that. No.
Yeah, but
that's not making money.
All right. Well, that was a week 2 recap. So now we're going to go into some of the cuts that occurred. This was the first week of cuts. I think teams cut down to 70. So each team cut like 5 people. I think it was like 75 to 70, something like that. So there were some pretty interesting cuts, some recognizable names that got cut. So we'll go through those. I added a couple to the list that you had on here.
I saw that. I wanted to start, and this might not be very notable, only for the fact that he didn't end up doing much in his career. Whether he gets signed by someone else to get a third chance. Seeing that the Falcons dropped Alden Tate really made me sad. I really have always thought that guy was going somewhere, and he just never has.
Is that because he was on the Bengals when you played them in Madden a couple seasons ago, and I think he became one of your best receivers?
I mean, maybe, but I mean, when I took over that team, I was excited for Alden Tate because of his draft, where he got drafted, going to a bad Bengals team after having a good college career. I just really thought he was going to be a good wide receiver, and he just hasn't done anything in the NFL. And just when I was looking through these names, seeing Alden Tate getting released again, not even in the final cuts, but in the week 2 cuts, that's got a sting for him.
Yeah, I remember he had some good moments in Cincinnati before they got suddenly overloaded with receivers as they are now. I added Geronimo Allison on here, and I'll tell you the only reason I did. The Falcons cut 2 wide receivers this week. I don't know who else they have on that team. They have Drake London, And then I think they cut Zacchaeus, the guy, the guy's name I cannot remember to save my life.
Olamide Zacchaeus is still listed on the depth chart on ESPN.
He is still there. Okay, so he's there, and Drake London's there. They
Brian
cut two
Edwards.
of them. They traded for him. It's just I didn't realize they had a plethora of receivers that they could be cutting guys. I was surprised.
Brian Edwards has never really done anything either. I mean, I guess he's just outshining the other guys in the preseason, but yeah, it's odd.
Keyshawn Johnson. That's funny. We just mentioned him from the Cardinals. Apparently, he is on the Falcons. But yeah, I only threw Geronimo Allison on there because I thought it was kind of ironic that the Falcons
dropped two names we actually know.
Yeah, we joke about them not having receivers, and they're out here cutting two that we know.
Next up on the cut list, I had the Buffalo Bills dropping Tavon Austin, which is just kind of sad because it's the end of that. I think it'll be the end of the era for Tavon Austin.
I didn't realize he was still in the league. I thought his
era
ended 4 years ago.
I only know he was because I saw a TikTok from the Bills of it was either Stephon Diggs or Gabriel Davis just being absolutely enamored with being on the same team as Tavon and growing up watching him in college in the NFL and modeling their game after him. So to see him be gone now and probably not going to play again, just the end of that. And Tavon Austin really was never great. He was decent on the Rams for a long time, but just a high draft pick that was fast, that made some big plays, but no, like he kind of reminds me of a lesser version of Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson,
much lesser.
See, I don't think Deshaun Jackson's that great either.
I just think Tavon Austin hasn't done anything ever. Like he's just a short, fast guy that never. He wasn't even a good returner.
The only thing, Tavon Austin and Deshaun Jackson, these are the two things I think of when either of their names is mentioned. Outrunning people and catching long passes. That's the only thing I think of with those two receivers.
I don't remember Tavon Austin ever doing that part of it. I mean, that's what Deshaun Jackson does. He's just a bomb guy or nothing. I don't remember Tavon Austin ever being that impressive at catching the long ball. Maybe he did. I'll look at his career stats, but I just don't have any memory of him doing anything other than being hyped up as, oh, he's so fast. Fun fact, Tavon Austin was drafted by the Rams in 2013 with the pick that they got from Washington in the RG3 trade.
Hey, there you go.
I will always remember Tavon Austin and Greg Robinson, who was their 2014 pick with the other draft pick they got from Washington.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is why I will always remember Tavon Austin.
Tavon Austin never had more than 509 yards in a season.
Yeah,
and it's funny because the 509-yard season, he had 107. Oh, that's targets, not catches. He only had 58 catches of the 107. Crap. Wow.
That is a terrible catch percentage.
So I'm thinking Tavon Austin was better than he was. And it's funny that these young kids wanted to model their game after Tavon Austin.
Well, and I think you said he was talking about
good
in
college,
yeah. Which totally understandable. But yeah, in the pros, looking at his stats, there's an 81-yard reception his rookie year, a 66-yard, 64. All right, he made some big plays, but 16 total touchdowns in 9 years. He played on the Jaguars last year. Did not know that.
Going on, this is the biggest drop from the week 2 cuts. Kenyon Drake from the Las Vegas Raiders dropped, not even in the final cuts, dropped in the week 2 cuts. That's insane to me.
He was being paid way too much money. John Gruden signed him to a stupid contract, and I guess they finally said it's just too much. But yeah, that's because he did well in Arizona 2 years ago before they signed him. It's surprising. It does mean Josh Jacobs, he's in his final year of his rookie deal that didn't pick up his 5th-year option, so a lot of people thought he's not going to get used that much, but Now looking at it, they dropped Kenyon Drake, so they've got Josh Jacobs, they've got the rookie Zaire White, they've got Amir Abdullah to be like their third down back. But it definitely clears up their running back room. But I liked Kenyon Drake when he was a Cardinal, and I think he'll sign on somewhere.
He has to. There's no way he doesn't sign somewhere. They'll just sign him to a better contract. But it's just weird.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him come back to Arizona. I mean, I like Eno Benjamin, but if I had the choice between Kenyon Drake as the number 2 or Eno Benjamin, I'd sign Kenyon Drake.
Oh, I was mad when he left the Cardinals. They didn't pay him. He went to the they paid him a lot of money. He went to the Raiders to be the backup to Josh Jacobs, and the Cardinals wanted him to be their number 1.
Yep.
But they didn't want to match that terrible contract, and here he is being dropped in week 2. Not week 3, not final cuts, week 2, under a new regime. All right, go ahead and talk about one of the other ones that you added on here. I'll be right back. I can still hear you. I'll be right back.
All right, I'll just keep going. So I added on Kelvin Harmon for the Commanders. I already talked about that. I mean, that's just a personal one. I was always a fan of his. So that's kind of heartbreaking. I hope he gets picked up. Maybe put on the practice squad. We'll see. Sticking with the receivers, and another one of our teams, the Bears dropped Daz Newsome. The interesting thing about that was he was a 6th round pick last year. So that's pretty soon to be cut. And for a team that you would think needs receivers and needs more talent, for them to say that Daz Newsome is less talented than everything else they have is kind of a damning description of Daz Newsome. Speaking of Bears, former first rounder Kevin White was cut by the Saints. I think that was for an injury designation, which would not be the first time that he's been cut because of an injury designation. So that's another one that, he was like a 7th overall pick, looked really talented, just has never seemed to be able to stick on to a team or stay healthy. So that's a shame. Another injury designation, Malcolm Butler from the Patriots, he was cut. I mean, that was the Super Bowl hero for them. I just want to say a couple years ago. It was probably 5 or 6 years ago at this point. But that's kind of a big name, and I'm sure Patriots fans are sad to see him go just because he was so instrumental in that Super Bowl win. Let's see here. J.C. Treader. I think we actually talked about J.C. Treader when we talked about on our first episode, when we were talking about the Browns losing their center for the season. We mentioned J.C. Treader being there as a backup, but he retired. So the Browns lost another one of their centers. I have no idea who their other center is, but that's a big hit for that offensive line to lose one to injury and then another guy retires. We'll see if they can do anything with that.
He was like, "Oh, I don't get to play with Deshaun Watson."
Yeah, he didn't want to wait till week 13 to snap the ball to Deshaun Watson.
Like, I might as well retire now.
Yeah, another retirement. Shakeem Griffin, drafted by the Seahawks.
I did see that check, Griffin.
Yes, he was on the Dolphins. I did not know that when he retired. So he retired from football.
He was on the Seahawks, right?
He was drafted by the Seahawks. They had his brother, and then they drafted him.
Is he the guy that has the arm deformity?
Yeah, he had a genetic disorder, I believe. So he lost his left arm or left hand.
Right.
I
always thought that was an awesome story that he managed to get drafted and play at a ridiculously high NFL level.
Yeah,
some people can't do it with 2 hands, and this dude's
right. I sure as hell couldn't.
This dude's like destroying people.
Yeah, I remember one of the coolest things I remember.
It must have inspired that Giants defensive lineman. What was his name?
Justin Pierre-Paul.
Yeah,
Jason
JPP.
Pierre-Paul.
He's like, yeah. I want to try that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna play with some fireworks.
Yeah, so he retired. Then
there's only two more that here before we get to this last one.
Yeah, you put those on there, so I'll let you talk about these two.
Okay, Minnesota Vikings dropped Albert Wilson. Albert Wilson There was a time with the Dolphins and their wide receivers that I just felt like they had the most ridiculous wide receivers on that team, that if these wide receiver core was on a team with a good quarterback and a good line, they would have just shown out, right? Albert Wilson was one of those guys. No, Albert Wilson. Yeah, Albert Wilson's the now I'm second guessing myself. Albert Wilson was the Dolphin, right?
I believe he was on the Chiefs.
Yeah, he was
and then
on the
went to the Dolphins.
He's the guy from the Dolphins he's who I'm thinking of. Man, I sometimes second guess myself. Anyways, Albert Wilson's a really good receiver. See that he's drafted. I don't know what the reasoning for that was, but just seeing it on that list was very surprising to me. Because he's got to be young still.
He is 30 years old.
Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah. See, I knew he was on the Chiefs first.
I didn't know he was on the Chiefs. I thought he got drafted by the Dolphins, so that might be why I thought he was young.
So he was signed as an undrafted free agent 2014 by the Chiefs. Went to the Dolphins in 2018. He opted out of the 2020 season because of COVID, so he didn't play then. And then he only signed with the Vikings on June 1st and then got cut on August 22nd. So he was on the team for 2 months. But yeah, that's
insane.
I remember him in Miami. I remember him in Kansas City. He was pretty good. But yeah, at this point now,
he had more yards in his best season than Tavon Austin, so there's that.
Yeah. They're the same height too, 5'9". God, I didn't realize Albert Wilson was that short.
Neither did I. That's crazy. He's the guy at the Lions tomorrow. We're like, we signed Albert Wilson. I would be like, all right, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah, why not?
And I love tall receivers, so that would be a change for me.
It would. It would be very interesting. But
I also didn't know he was 5'9" until you just said it. So
there's just something about him that stuck in your mind, even though you didn't know how old he was or how tall he was. Or how
I just know the name. I know who he played for, and I knew that I had him on fantasy.
Like
I knew that I know when all my receivers were getting down to injuries on my fantasy team, I could sign Albert Wilson and at least get points. So
just a body.
The Houston Texans released Andy Janovich, the fullback, who they just signed this offseason as a free agent for a ridiculous $1.7 million. So for the fullbacks out there, that is a bad sign. If the worst team in the NFL can't sign one of the better fullbacks in the league and keep him for a year on a ridiculous contract, that is bad news for fullbacks. So
it's funny, Washington released their fullback too this week. They didn't sign. I don't think they were paying him that much, but just kind of a funny. Fullbacks just keep getting cut. The position's just falling out of favor.
Tell me this. Can you name? I think I could name one for the Commanders / formerly Redskins. A fullback that you loved.
God, we had a fullback.
They had a really good one, right?
A couple years ago, we did. I cannot remember his name to save my life right now. But when I think of fullbacks, I think of Mike Allstott in Kansas City, not Cooley. He wasn't a fullback.
No, that's tight end.
I can't remember.
Daryl Young.
Yes, Daryl Young. That was his name. I liked him. He was good. But yeah, I can't. I wouldn't consider him one of the greatest fullbacks of all time. I only knew him because I was a Washington fan. But Mike Allstott, and then the guy in San Francisco right now, whose name is completely escaping me.
Dude, it's weird. It's got a lot of W's in it.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, God. Anyways, Larry Centers, obviously, for Arizona. I remember he played, he
also the Redskins.
Yeah, he probably did.
Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah.
That's
Juszczyk. Thank you. And then I remember Mike Tolbert from the Chargers. He was a good fullback too. So
the reason I ask is this because when I became a Lions fan, and even after the years after Barry Sanders retired, the fullback position held a special place to me because the Lions utilized it so well with Corey Schlesinger that ever since Corey Schlesinger, I always want the Lions to have fullbacks, and I want them to use them like they did Corey Schlesinger, because Corey Schlesinger on the Lions was what Kyle Juszczyk is on the 49ers. The guy that blocks like crazy and then would catch passes, run like crazy, and then when he was given the ball, he would also rush the ball. I wish fullback was a position that was still utilized. I love those I formations.
Because when I think of a fullback, I only think of either the lead blocker or the short yardage guy. I don't usually think of the catching the passes and stuff, but yeah, with like Juszczyk and you talked about Schlesinger, I mean that is a portion. I mean they're basically a jack of all trades. But I'm a big power run fan. So you stick a fullback up there, have him hit the hole, push the linebacker out of the way. I mean that's the way I like to see.
I love power run. The I formation is just, you line up in the I formation, which doesn't happen much anymore because most teams don't even have a fullback.
Nope.
I love the I formation. Last one I wanted to talk about. And you know why I put this on here, right?
I have no idea. I have not heard this story at all.
Okay, well, I'll tell it to you.
Yes, please recap it for me and the audience.
It actually makes me very uncomfortable and upset being a dad. No. I guess you don't have to be a dad to be very uncomfortable and upset by this.
Really don't think you
do. The Buffalo Bills earlier this week released punter Matt Hack. Unfortunately, not a big... Who cares? Why are you telling me this? The Buffalo Bills also drafted a guy named the punt god, Matt Araiza, from San Diego State. Well, guess what? They've also released Matt Araiza. Now they don't have a punter. Now you might think to yourself, did they release the wrong Matt? Did they just accidentally release Matt Hack instead of Matt Araiza? No, that is not what happened, because holy shit, this story is absolutely insane. This dude, this whole story just, it reaffirms every story I hear about the NFL. Let's go back. No, I'll tell the story and then go back to why this is weird to me. Matt Araiza, the charges being brought against, it's not actually charges, it's a civil suit because they never finished looking into it in San Diego like they should have, probably because this guy was on the football team and whatever. But basically, I don't even like using the words that go into this story. Basically, him and two teammates from the San Diego State were involved in a R word. For everyone out there, if you don't know the R word, ask a friend. You'll know what I'm talking about.
I just want to interrupt you real quick when you mentioned that, because the thing that really makes my skin crawl about this story is not that he was accused of the R word. It was a gang R word.
Yes.
Like that description, which is everywhere, is just the most cringy. It's all cringy, but like to see that be used just makes it even worse.
You want to talk about cringy? The fact that people throw in train and things, words like that, with what happened here, where basically,
I had not heard that much description behind it.
I read a bunch of stories, but just because this was interesting to me with all the Deshaun Watson stuff that happened, the fact that he had done it himself, and then he led this girl into a house, the house he lived in, left her in a bedroom for two other teammates to do the same thing to this person. And then on top of that, she was a minor. Like, so here's where I was going to say earlier but you needed to hear the story. This is where I don't trust the NFL where it comes to money, making money, and giving a crap about people. The Bills, this is the Bills, right? Yeah, the Bills knew about this in the end of July and did nothing about it. And the only time they did anything was when they started receiving public pushback. Yep. And that is when they did it. That is why Matt Hack was released first, and they kept this guy despite knowing The team knowing what had happened and what the allegations were, and that he was in a civil suit with the woman that this happened to. And she did nothing. First off, there was no ever reason to think she did anything wrong, but she reported this the day after it happened, and the police did not investigate it correctly. So, like, now it's come down to a civil suit. Not a criminal suit, a civil suit. It makes me mistrust the NFL so much. When the Texans can build a contract around knowing for a fact that this guy's going to get suspended, Deshaun Watson's going to get suspended, so not putting all the money in that year, it's like, this is so freaking shady. The fact that they actually released him is a step in the right direction to me. But
well, they still waited a couple days after the news broke to release him.
Yeah,
so not only did they know
they have no high ground in this. None.
Yeah. And the statement I saw was something about, we were trying to gather the facts about this.
Let the legal system take its course.
Yeah, and it's like, and you talk about the Texans. I mean, they knew what Deshaun Watson was doing too, and they helped him. They gave him NDAs. They gave him a standing room at a hotel for him to go get massaged in. Washington, Dan Snyder, everybody knew what that dumbass has been doing with the cheerleaders and everything else. It is not by any means. I mean, the NFL is not, a
Robert
great
Kraft,
organization.
throw that in there.
Yeah, but the difference I think is when you're talking about players, and when the Bills found out about it, and I can understand, okay, because when was the lawsuit, like the thing filed? Because if my understanding was it was just filed this week, because like.
Yeah, I think the civil suit was filed recently, for sure.
So, but the problem is when that got filed, that should have been the moment that they tell okay, you know what, we're gonna put you on the NFI list. We're gonna.
I said there's got to be some type of designation that they can put him on while they figure out the due course of whatever.
Go home, you're suspended at the very least. We're suspending you until we know more about the situation. Like, they could have done something rather than just let's
pretend
see what
it doesn't exist. Yeah,
let's just see what happens. But it's so.
Listen, I know privacy laws, all that type of stuff. They couldn't outright come out at the beginning of August and say we know about this, but. You can do things, even secretly. Like, people disappear from practice all the time, and you never know why. And this would be one of those situations where, this guy was not at practice or at camp, starting camp for this long. We don't know why, but now we're going to focus on the guy that's here. Do something to show that, hey, we knew this was happening and we did something about it. They didn't do anything about it. They knew they didn't do anything. It's so annoying.
It's really disgusting that a guy can get accused of something like that. And I mean, whether it happened or not, I don't know. But when you get accused of something like that, the best thing the Bills could have done is just, okay, you the player need to step away from the team indefinitely until you get that figured out.
Figure it out.
The Bills shouldn't want to be associated with that once the accusation's out there, the lawsuit's been filed. It took them at least 2-3 days to make the decision to cut him, in which they were, we were gathering information. What information could you have gathered?
You yourself gathered.
Yeah. I don't trust the Buffalo Bills to have a better investigative crew than a police department. I'm sorry. It's just, it's ridiculous that, because the thing for me is now every headline that pops up is Buffalo Bills punter or former Buffalo Bills punter. If I'm a Bills fan or I'm a part of that team, I wouldn't want our name in the headline with this guy. I wouldn't want to be associated with this guy. And they are. And that's, they didn't know when they drafted him, fine. If they found out in July, they could have suspended him then. They could have just suspended him and said, oh, indefinite suspension, won't go into it, it's private. And then when this shit happened, it would have been like, oh, okay, now we get it. But the fact that they knew and they're like, well, keep going. And then they release the other punter knowing what the rookie,
full well.
what the guy has, it's like you cut your punter and commit to the rookie, the punt god, Matt Araiza. You're committing to him knowing what he did. You're just assuming it's never going to come out. Like that part seems a little weird to me, that they would commit to this punter knowing what he has done and just assuming it's all going to be fine.
Maybe there won't be any backlash.
Yeah,
maybe we'll be okay. Let's find out.
Let's
roll the dice.
The same way San Diego State did. It's like I don't know, man. The whole story is just
maybe it's a perk of being a fan of a very bad team. If you're watching the stream, you can see Calvin Johnson behind me with big ass Lions logo on his helmet. Maybe as a fan of being a bad team, and maybe it's like bad teams, if this stuff happens, are just like, you're gone. We're not dealing with that. But I don't remember anything like this ever happening for the Lions.
I
don't remember it for the Cardinals. But when I think about teams like the Ravens, the Cowboys, any of these successful teams, they just want to hold on to anything with controversy as long as they can, because they're like, you know what, we can get through this. We'll be totally fine. We don't need to deal with all that. We'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a weird attitude to have, of especially with a punter. I mean, no disrespect.
Yes.
But
this is the Coffin Corner Podcast, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Listen,
like,
we love punters here.
We love good punters, man. Tressway, shout out to my man Tressway.
Jack Fox,
love
you. Sam Martin, I miss you, but at least we got Jack Fox.
Yes, Tressway, please come on the podcast. But yeah, but you're talking about a 6th-round draft pick, a punter. If this guy, to know what he had been accused of, whether or not, of course he's going to say he's innocent, duh. But the fact that you've been accused of this, it's like you had another punter on your roster. You could have very easily just told, oh, you know what, we're going to just suspend Araiza or put him on the practice squad, or just step away from the team. Go home. Like, you don't even have to suspend him. Just send him home and let Matt Hack just punt for you in practice.
The Jimmy Garoppolo treatment.
Right, yeah, just go home. It baffles my mind that the Bills, whether it's the arrogance or the hubris to think that this is going to just go away, or no one's going to mind if he gets accused of this. Like, oh, no one cares. We just going to use him punter.
And when did the Bills become that team?
It's success, man. It's the success. It's just,
you're the Bills. Cut this guy.
You get a little success, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, whatever. We can do what we want to. We're the Bills.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, I couldn't let that story go untalked about, because it's just the fact that it is a punter, first off, to being covered up for this much. Like, I still can't see it with other players, but the fact that this was a punter this was happening to, and we all know how punters are treated in the NFL, it's just confusing and saddening, to be honest.
Honestly, it just goes to show you. I mean, this guy,
the almighty
at SDSU,
dollar.
Well, and he was part of the great SDSU football team last year and got away with this probably again, not officially yet, but I mean, what things are other players on other teams getting away with that never come out? I mean, that's the really depressing thing, is that we talk about, athletes getting away with, I mean, in some case, Ben Roethlisberger, remember that story? I mean, just all these kinds of crazy things that athletes get away with because of who they are. Yeah. And this guy, as a punter, like,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
it is very,
it's such a weird, moving kind of off of that topic, but I just want to point this out for anyone that is listening. And when we say allegations and things like this, like, obviously I'm not a judge and I'm not a jury, so I can't say this did or didn't happen. But for everyone out there that's like, these are allegations, why would you believe that person? I, as a person, personally, and I don't know where you stand on this, so you can tell me where you are, but me as a person, I would rather believe a victim than victim blame or, just believe the person being accused saying that it doesn't happen. I can tell you how many times that like celebrities or sports figures have these things happen to them that are true that just get pushed under the rug, and then eventually anyone brings them up again, that never happened. Well, then why did they pay them off? I am firmly in the camp of never not believing the victim. And I understand that there are people that go for money grabs and all that kind of stuff, but this is a horrific story that this person is going to have to deal with. If they made it up, they're going to have to explain themselves to every other person they ever meet from this point forward. And why would a victim do that? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I'll say this. So innocent until proven guilty is the law. So I do side on that side of it is, listen, if you're going to accuse somebody of something, like you've got to be able to prove it. However, I'm also going to say in a situation like this where it's like literally he said, she said, she has her story, and of course, the matter race is going to say it never happened. I read the details of the story while you were talking about it. Let's look this up. I don't think a victim would come up with a story that is so detailed and so horrific just for attention.
Yeah.
You're accusing a punter and several other people who don't even play football anymore of something like it's not like if this is a cash grab, she's
who are you gaming?
Very low.
Yes,
she's grabbing very low.
Exactly.
So I do like in this situations like this. Yeah, I mean, obviously, innocent until proven guilty. I mean, that's the law. And I support that.
I will not say I disagree with that. I am with you there.
Yeah, but I'm also not going to say my knee-jerk reaction is not, oh, she's lying because he's an athlete and she's trying to get something from him.
Yeah,
I do not say that.
Or Deshaun Watson, when you get when I see 25 allegations, I don't think 25 people that don't know each other decided to come together and destroy a man's career.
You the same thing.
Yeah.
You get one allegation and it'll be like, all right, Deshaun Watson target on his back. I get that. 25 is more like, what a weird coincidence. So in this situation, I look at it and I say, listen, if he didn't do it, if she's completely making this up, it should be very easy for him to prove. I mean, phones track our location 24/7. Give him they should be able to prove he wasn't even at the house or at the party, or he doesn't know the person, or all
that
these
she
things
wasn't.
should be very able to yeah.
Line up their GPSs. Where were they?
Yeah, it should be very easy to prove. I mean, you're talking but if you're unable to prove it, yeah, you're guilty. Or if you settle it, you look guilty. And I know people say, "Oh, we settled. I settled because of the distraction.
I just wanted it to be over.
I just want it to go away." All right, sure. But if you're innocent and you have what is the line from The Office? Kathy Bates, when she's interviewing them about who leaked the I don't know if you've watched The Office, I'm sure, but anyway, she says it's like a guilty conscience needs no I can't remember what she said, but it's such a great line about like, listen, if you're actually innocent, you're going to stand there claiming your innocence until the day you die. If you pay somebody off to make something go away, boy, that doesn't seem innocent to me.
A guilty conscience needs no accuser. Is that what it is?
No, I don't. That doesn't sound right.
That's what Google filled in for the rest of it.
Oh,
I guess that's an idiom.
Needs no accuser.
A feeling of guilt and remorse can be so strong that it will prompt an offender to confess, even if no one is requiring them to do so.
All right. I guess that's
kind of like the telltale heart.
Her line: a clear conscience don't need no mercy.
Yeah, no wonder it didn't come up.
No mercy. Yeah. You weren't Googling in the Southern accent? No, but
sorry. I should have put office quote in the
that's
Google
literally
search.
what I did. It popped right up. But yeah, so that's the way I look at it. Like if he's innocent, he's gonna fight it because I mean, yeah. Why? But if you pay somebody off or you settle out of court or something, you look guilty. I'm sorry, Deshaun Watson.
You will always
guilty.
look guilty.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So, but this is I want to follow it because I definitely want that girl to get some justice. If she is telling the truth, it's a horrific. I mean, reading those details, I had no idea. I had just read the stories. I had not read the detailed account, and that is disgusting.
I lived in San Diego, so for everyone out there, I lived in San Diego. San Diego State football is massive there. The only thing bigger when I lived there was Chargers football. And I'm sorry, but San Diego State football was almost bigger than the Padres at the point I lived there. So this does not surprise me if it just was swept under the rug.
Yeah, and that happens. You've seen stories all the time about college, and not just football. I remember the Duke lacrosse team years ago, the same thing. They got swept under the rug. Like, it's just, unfortunately, that's the way those schools treat it because the football team brings in money, so let's do what we can to protect them. And I mean, this is yeah. But on a brighter note, the Buffalo Bills did make Matt Barkley punt for them in their game last week. I think it was last week. I don't know. I saw that Matt Barkley was punting for them because of this. They had cut Hawk and they didn't activate Areza, so that at least is a funny way to end the story about I want to go back now and watch videos of Matt Barkley punting.
That's actually amazing. I love that.
Yes. So, all right. Well, hey, another 2-hour show. That just seems to be what we do.
Listen, whether it's you or Wink, doesn't matter who I'm with. 2 hours is the mark. It's either going to be 2 hours or it's going to be something higher. That's the way it goes. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation because I enjoy talking about it. So I love football. I love talking about it. It could be the most minute thing, and I'm still gonna talk about Albert Wilson. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's always, especially right now with preseason and as we get into the season, there's always gonna be something to talk about, whether it's injuries or trades or just how players are doing. Like, we are gonna have plenty to talk about all the way through the Super Bowl. So 2 hours, I think, is probably pretty normal. I think that's where we're going to be at.
I think we're setting precedents here.
Except in 2 weeks, since we're not doing next week. In 2 weeks, when we're back on the 9th, we'll probably have a 4-hour show to recap everything.
We'll try to do 2 hours. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you don't follow us, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at Coffin Corners. Also on TikTok, Coffin Corner Podcast. You can find some of our stuff there. As well, I was supposed to get the YouTube exists. I haven't posted last week's podcast. I'll probably release it. Last week's podcast, the same time I release this week's podcast. It's set up. If you go on to YouTube and you look up Coffin Corner Podcast, you will find us there. There won't be any videos, but once this podcast goes up, I'll release last week's video as well, so you can watch this week's. I would understand if you don't watch last week's, but if you want to, that would be awesome. So those should be up soon, and I'll get all of our socials updated there. But the YouTube will be up soon. So thanks, everybody, for listening, supporting us. We appreciate every single person that is taking the time to listen to us, whether it was first episode, from then, second, now, it doesn't matter. All of you are awesome, and we appreciate you. So, Richie, you got anything else to say before we go?
Nope. Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching the live stream if you did, and following us on social media, and we hope you continue to listen because we're really enjoying doing this, and as we get into the season, it becomes even more fun, and I can't wait to discuss all that, and it's a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys are having fun too, and hopefully you keep listening. We'll miss you next week, but we'll be back on September 9th.
Awesome. All right, then. Well, we'll catch you in a couple weeks for episode 4. And until then, you guys enjoy your week, and we will see you on the flip side.
Bye, everyone.